It is now 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First thing I'd like to do is welcome Mike here to our Zoom meeting. We appreciate you being here, Mike.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can get a lot of things done tonight in regards to your needs and what you are looking for. And personally, I would like to thank everybody and Joe for running the meeting that I was not able to be here for. Sounds like you did a great job. Joe, I saw some of your notes. Mike, your notes, great. So I really appreciate that you guys took over the helm when I wasn't here. So it just goes to show you how I'm not needed, that you guys can do a great job.
Good try, Harry. Good try.
Okay. Let's open it with the minutes. I was not here, so I'll abstain. Any?
I just reviewed and they look good to me, so I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion accepted by, a motion made by Dan. Second.
I'll second, Harry.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a voice vote for approval?
Mike Ferguson, in favor.
Gracie, aye.
Becker, aye.
For city abstain.
Okay. We have a quorum for that. Minutes are accepted. Joe, from the last meeting, do you have anything that you want to review or go over at this time?
No, I think I think the last outstanding we can go over after, let Mike back to his game, but we can go over what we talked through regarding Nancy Nichols last time, but we can wait until Mike is through to do that, Harry, if that's all right.
That's fine. I'd like to get Mike on first. Okay. Mike, why don't you take the floor right now and kind of run through stuff. We're going to have questions for you, and I'm sure you for us. So would you like to take the lead on that?
Sure. So I did receive some questions from Joe already regarding some of the items that you guys reviewed. And I'll just run through those real quick. The first one was, who are the member towns of the region? That's going to be Barry, Hubbardson, Oakham, Rutland, and Warren. So those are the 5 communities that are part of the Regional Dispatch Center.
We go all the way out to Warren, Mike?
Yes, we do. That's our furthest one. Yep.
Okay.
Second question was, have all of the member towns committed to this initiative? So regarding the radio upgrade district-wide, it is something that I have spoken with the 10 chiefs from all the communities, and it's something that is in dire need between all 5 police departments and 5 fire departments. So it is something that everybody does need. But regarding that, this is my first time actually producing a capital budget for you guys. This was as per the request of the town administrator.
Yeah.
So it's still in a work in progress. We're still trying to figure out how this process is going to pan out. If, for say that you guys do approve an item, how do we build these communities, or how do they pay their portion of that capital item? So that's something that me and Ron are still working with the other town administrators of the communities to try to figure out streamline a process per se.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Harry?
Through the chair, yes, Joe.
Mike, and I appreciate that. I know it's definitely a learning curve, especially when you're dealing with 5 towns that you got to try to align around a very sizable expenditure.
Yes.
I guess speaking for myself, and others on the committee can maybe weigh in, but given the size of this expenditure, I don't know that I could recommend it moving forward as far as a capital request for the town of Rutland until I know it had equal support from the other 4 member towns. Yep. Because at the end of the day, the way this whole thing is structured is Rutland can't foot the bill alone. It needs that contribution from the other 4 member towns. And if we don't get it, then Rutland shouldn't be expected to pay the whole thing. So I think, you know, my expectation would be that we definitely need the sign on across the board.
Yep.
And not only for 1 year, because I'm thinking that 1 year builds on another. And if you skip years in between, you kind of lose the effectiveness of the program. That's just a hunch on my part. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need that buy-in for all 5 years of the program. I think it's 5 years, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And I wasn't expecting this to get approved this year, knowing that we don't have a streamlined process in place. I would like a certified vote from the other communities to get that buy-in so that Rutland is safeguarded. You know, I would hate for one of these communities to pull out halfway through, and now who's going to foot the bill at that point? And that's something I don't want to happen. So that's something that me and Ron are trying to figure out on what we can do to make this better for all. So I definitely agree.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. That helps.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd like to ask one quick question.
Joe,
Sure.
who's Mike?
Yeah.
Through the chair, please.
I would, could you repeat again the 5 towns? I don't write fast enough.
Oh, no, sure. It's Barry, Hubbardston, Oakham, Rutland, and Warren.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Mike, I have I guess I'd like to go back to a little bit of basics with you. Do you
Sure.
have an understanding of how the process works here at CIPC to help you see what's going forward? Or do you already have a good handle on that?
I got a good general understanding of how it's supposed to work. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The third question that was asked, what is Rutland's portion? The overall expense in total, for each year individually. So I did that today. The total expense for the town of Rutland would be $362,647.55. Again, $362,647.55. That's the total expense for the radio wide upgrade for just Rutland. And if that was broken down for 5 years, it would be $72,529.51. Again, $72,529.51. So that's the breakdown. If we pulled it out of and just took care of Rutland and made the other 4 towns worry about upgrading that equipment on their own.
Is that a final price, Mike? In other words, we agree to it up front and then we have to budget it out over 5 years, or does that price go up depending on how the equipment is purchased, when it's purchased?
That would be the final price. It may come down depending. These are just general numbers. If I got final numbers, I'm sure with the amount of equipment that's being purchased, it falls under different discounts with the vendor. So it would all depend on that. But this is like the high number, and it wouldn't go higher than that.
Is there any grant money in this because of the communications issue?
Yep. So that was one of the other questions. Actually, it's the next.
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
No, that's that's okay. That was actually the next question, and there is a grant through the state 911 department. It is the regional development grant that comes out each year. It is a competitive grant throughout the state of Massachusetts. The State Department has their priority list. Number 1 being newly formed regional PSAPs. So 2 towns that are just getting into it and just starting. That's their number 1 priority with the funding. And I think this year there's about, it's either 11 or 16 million that they have to divide between all the communities. But those that are just joining are priority number 1. Priority number 2, regional PSAPs that are already formed and are bringing on another community is number 2. And 3, which would be us, is a regional PSAP that is doing upgrades or maintaining the dispatch center. So that's where we fall. So we fall under number 3 on the bulletin. I have applied for this radio upgrade for the past, I think it's 2 or 3 years now. And I did just submit it again for this year. So I'm hoping it's a couple phases. So I broke it down as well for the State 911 department, just like I have for the capital plan. So it's pretty much in the same process. And we won't know the answer to that grant, I think, until roughly right around July, August, right around there. That's when we find out when the grants are awarded. So that's the only grant that I'm aware of that could be purchased. There is Homeland Security, but that money's all tied up with different projects right now. There is no other grants that I'm aware of that I could apply for.
Okay.
Eric, can I ask a question through you?
Through the chair, go ahead.
So, Mike, going back to one of the other questions about the split.
Yep.
And maybe just a little clarification. From what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, any one town could potentially upgrade their own stuff without other towns doing it if they so chose. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, they would have to find their own funding sources at that point. I know the police departments and fire departments, there is grants out for them to replace equipment. Whether or not they get it as well is a different story. I do know our fire department and police department did get some equipment just recently, but not enough to replace the amount of pieces that are within the 2 departments, which is a lot of equipment between the 2. But they were able to secure some grant money to replace some pieces. So they started the process. Rutland has, at least. The other communities, I'm not quite sure if they secured the same grants or not, but there is other opportunities for the towns out there to replace these items as well.
Okay, and the breakdown that you provided from a cost perspective, is that based on, the calculation in the agreement, a portion based on population, or is that breakdown based on the amount of equipment each town needs? Like Rutland may need more radios than Ocam or Hubbardston, for example, and vice versa. So how's that cost apportioned? Is it by contract or by volume of equipment?
By volume equipment. So what I did today was just took Rutland PD and Rutland Fire, took their equipment counts, and then calculated those by the quotes that we have right now currently for the equipment. And that's how I got those figures for just Rutland.
Got it. Okay.
Anybody else have questions for Mike at this point? Because I have one. Anybody else? Mike, could you run through us a little bit? I'm reading your description and justification here that it's past end of life by more than 5 years. Does it not function the way under today's problems with what we have out there, fire, terrorism, all these crazy things? Does it not really work as well as it should? In other words, are we really behind the 8 ball on this?
Yeah, so most of the communities, Rutland as well, a lot of the equipment, like you said, is more than 5 years past end of life. The equipment does degrade after time. Reception does get worse over time. The internal components of these equipment, when they're in these cruisers with the sun blaring down on this electronic equipment, the heat does affect this equipment. So it does affect the life expectancy of this of the radios. The equipment that is out now, there's more technology out there. As we're all aware, technology is growing. There's more interoperability with these radios that I have displayed here, giving both police and fire the ability to talk to other agencies that are on different radio bands that currently right now they cannot communicate with on big scenes. So this would alleviate that problem as well. There's other special functions that the newer radios can do. If a police officer is in a struggle and falls over, the radio is smart enough to know that and sends an alert to dispatch right away. That's one of the functions. It has other functions for the fire department as well. So the equipment is deteriorating quickly. Some of the radios are finally starting to just stop working. I believe Rutland just had one of those that just happened the other day. So they're looking at replacing that right now. So they're all discontinued as well. So parts are hard to find right now as well for a lot of this equipment. So that's currently what's going on with that. Hope I answered that.
When you
Through the
talk-
chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
What is the life expectancy of this equipment?
Life expectancy usually, so portables, I believe, is 7 to 10 years. And mobiles, I believe, is a little bit higher. I think it's 15 to 20, I believe. I would have to double check on those figures though.
15 to 20 on the
Mobiles,
base?
yep, base, yep. And then the portables are 7 to 10. It all depends.
Yeah, I understand.
Now, on the base, would that have an impact in the dispatch center? Mike, if we upgrade all this stuff, does that make the dispatch center better? Or are we talking about interconnectability among all the towns with the radio, so Rutland and Ocam could talk to each other or switch signals to other organizations, and that would improve the efficiency of the center?
Yeah, so it would actually improve both the interoperability throughout the communities as well with dispatch. So it would improve the radio coverage throughout the communities. Most of these radios have higher power watts that get pushed out, so it pushes out a stronger signal. So there's not too many areas, but there is some areas in Rutland where it's very hard to hear some of our officers or firefighters, which does pose a safety risk for them if it comes down to them in trouble and needing some help. So this would improve that and improve the interoperability as well.
Do any of these run off satellite, or are they all cell-based, tower-based?
They're all off radio frequencies through the SEC. So they all run off of that, but they do have the option to add SIM cards to these pieces of equipment, which just adds another layer. If we bought other equipment, there's gateways that we can buy. If we bought a gateway and then added the cell cards to these, anywhere where they don't have radio coverage, but they have cell service, they'd still be able to use the equipment. So it really broadens the radio coverage that they can receive.
As Rutland grows, is that an issue that you'd be looking at down the road for another cost item or a request item to upgrade to those SIM cards? Or
Those, that's a possibility way down the line.
Okay.
That's new technology that I haven't dealt with or haven't really researched too much on, but I know it's out there. But that's well down the road.
Okay, so not an issue for the next 5 years for us, you'd say?
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Okay.
Question here,
Go ahead.
through the chair. I've noticed in the paperwork that's in the 5-year plan that Ron gave us, there's additional equipment in the next couple of years. Those are optional upgrades, or are they something that are going to have to be purchased?
So we going in just jumping off the end user radio replacement. We're jumping off of that, and you're talking about like the monitors and all that other
Right.
equipment. Okay.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah. So that's additional equipment that we are looking to purchase as well. And I can run over those real quick. The second capital budget item that I requested was new dispatch monitors. Pretty much streamline the process right now. They have small monitors, 1 to 2, not enough real estate. Most of my dispatchers have, I think, about 15 to maybe 20 different screens that need to be up. So they're toggling back and forth between pages and software programs and stuff like that. These screens would give them additional either 4 to, I think it was 6 additional screens on top of the 2. So it just gives them more real estate, allows more screens to be open, quicker dispatch times going out instead of having to try to find your dispatch software that's being hidden behind 2 other programs. So that's currently what that item's for. Any questions on that?
I have one quick question here. You may not have to go through the others. We'll take them into account each year when we look at the budget.
Yep.
But my initial question is, the full system when it's installed will run just fine even without these additions. They just improve capacity later on, correct?
Correct.
Right, okay. So we're not actually making a commitment to any of these things at this point in the future.
Right. There's no commitment at this point. This is just me bringing what we have for capital needs at this point, and we're still trying to figure out a process of how to handle capital items through this regional effort.
Okay. Then basically you've answered my questions, and I don't need breakdowns of everything year after year then. At this point, we'll take each one of those as they come in the future.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Harry, through you, can I just
Go ahead,
make a
Joe.
point? On things like the monitors, Mike, and you know, everyone can chime in to make sure I don't misspeak on behalf of the committee here, but if I'm reading this right, the request is for 4 of these monitors totaling $10,000 in 2023. So based on capital items and the definition of capital, it probably doesn't rise to a capital item, Mike, because 4 units divided by 10,000 doesn't meet that threshold that we have in the bylaw to consider it. So just, you know, an FYI for you, for the future planning, it wouldn't necessarily, that particular item wouldn't need to go through us, I don't think, unless there's any difference of opinion on the committee.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the monitors too, Joe, and I'm thinking, you know, 4 monitors, you know, average cost maybe $600 at the most for a monitor. I don't know the type of monitor you need, Mike, but would you be better off going with a 23-inch screen and a 12-inch screen just to add more capacity? I'm trying to think how you can narrow down so you have everything on one screen so somebody doesn't have to be bouncing back and forth all the time.
Yeah, so these are actually 59 inches, and they're 59 inches wide. And we'd be looking at putting 2 of these at each station, which gives them, they can make it between, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, either 8 or 6 different screens. So these divide, it has special software built into these monitors where it actually turns into either 4 or 6 separate screens on one monitor.
So it's not a traditional monitor then?
No, definitely not. No.
Okay. All right.
No, it's a very, that's why the price is kind of high for each monitor is because of the size as well as what it can do for us as well.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for Mike on the monitors. Does anybody else have any? Do you have a good understanding now, Mike, of what Joe said about,
yeah,
you know, we look at cap? Okay.
Yep, definitely. I understand that. Yep.
Okay. I mean, unless you're getting a 162-inch monitor, you know, I mean, that wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe this isn't the right word, but how fragile, you've talked about how there might be a safety issue and so forth, but how fragile is the system we have now? If we had some event happen, how fragile is that mobile and portable and base unit system we have now?
So it all depends. Like like the radio that Chief Monaco just had for one of his cruisers. I think it was just yesterday, I believe. It just stopped working. So this is something we can't predict. We don't know how these radios are going to react. It's a matter of time where most of the equipment just stops working. So there's really no science of trying to figure out when is this radio in this car going to stop working for us. You know, I can't really predict that. But knowing that it's already past end of life, the radio through the manufacturer has been discontinued for over 5 to 7 years. So it just tells me that we're on the edge of a safety issue because we're so far past those dates. You
Okay.
know,
What about the other towns in that same regard?
they are in the same position. So
Okay.
a lot of the towns. So what most of these departments do when they buy a new cruiser, they take the equipment out of the old cruiser and just swap it over to the new one. Nobody's purchasing new equipment until it physically breaks, which has put them in this position. So that's where we're at right now. Most of the towns are exactly the same with Rutland.
Okay. All right.
Harry, another
So-
question that brings another question to mind. How many of these units are we talking in Rutland, Mike, when you were doing your calculations?
I wish I wrote that down, Joe. How many? It's on my spreadsheet on my computer right now. I can email that over to you. I'm just ballparking. I know it's over, I think it's close to 100 or little over 100 pieces of equipment.
Really?
But I can get that definite. There's a lot on the fire side because pretty much they have a portable for every single firefighter that's on scene. So that's where a lot of the counts are built up. The police department side, he's growing his department, so his numbers are starting to go up as well. But most of the items are on the fire side. There's a lot more pieces of equipment.
So on the fire, I guess maybe and Harry, I'm sorry, it brings two more questions to mind if that's okay
keep
through
going.
you.
That's very good. Keep going.
All right, so let's just say for scenario's sake, and I don't know the numbers, let's say 50 radios are on the fire side. At any given fire event, how many of those radios are actually in use all at the same time?
That's a good question, and another one that you can't really predict, but it depends on the turnout of what he gets. So it depends on the call too. If it's a structure fire, you're probably going to get most of his personnel to show up. If it's a fire alarm activation, a lot of guys, they don't really get out of bed for those. It all depends, you know. So it depends on the incident. If it's a large scale event, either tornado, hurricane came through, I can guarantee you probably 99% of those pieces of equipment are going to be used. But for the most part, a majority of them do get used on any given scene. Like a car accident, you're having 1, 2, 3 pieces of equipment go, and if they're fully staffed, that's 2, 4, 10, roughly 15 right there. And that's on a small scale event, like a motor vehicle accident. So there's 15 pieces of equipment that could be being used at any given point.
Okay.
But the 50, it all depends. It really does.
All right.
It depends on the severity of the incident.
Right, because the reason I was bringing that up is on the portables. When you're talking the portables, chances are you've probably in most situations got some equipment available should one not operate correctly. But on the police side, because we're talking also about the radios and the cruisers, right? To your point,
Yes.
every time we get a new cruiser, we just kind of move the equipment from old to new.
Yep.
I'm wondering is if, you know, I obviously the first, probably your preferred option here is to work with the member towns, get a holistic program approved across the town membership and move forward that way. But if you can't get that, because it may be a challenge with tight budget times, I'm wondering if on Rutland's part, we could potentially look at a program. Now we're turning cruises over every 5 years or so. You know, as we start doing that, to look at including the radio in that appropriation.
Right.
Just another thought as a plan B, should things not work out, trying to get this holistic
Yeah.
program off the ground.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally agree. I'm ready to work with whoever to try to push this program through. It's a much needed program, so whatever way we can figure out how to fund this and how to push it forward, I'm all for. So I'm not against any suggestions at all.
Any follow-up questions?
Question through the chair.
Go ahead, Mike.
If two of these towns can't afford it, Rutland could still go ahead with their share. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would definitely break this down. Now thinking about it more and more, I'd probably just take each town, grab their figures like I did with Rutland's today, and break them down for each community and see if they want to do it on their own. If not, try to group it together and then split it over 5 years and see if that would work for them. I'm not quite sure.
Is there a cost savings by all the towns doing it together, as opposed to if Rutland has to go it alone?
Yes, definitely. So again, it depends on the quantity of what you're purchasing. Depends on how much of a discount you're going to get from that vendor. So obviously you buy more, you're going to get a bigger discount. So getting all 5 to sign on, yes, we get a very good discount on this equipment.
That makes sense.
Mike, you mentioned fire and police. Are these units on the EMTs too?
Yeah. So I include the EMTs, EMS department as part of the fire. Yes. Yep.
Okay. How much longer do you think we can go without this upgrade?
I don't want to go too much longer. It's already been too long already. So I'm hoping this year the state buys onto my program and allows us that funding so we can start moving this process forward to at least get some equipment replaced. But I wouldn't like to go too much longer. Whether we start telling these departments to start figuring in cruiser radios with their purchase of their cruiser, increasing their lease payment or whatever. If we have to do that, then we're going to have to do that as well. I just go ahead.
I think Joe brought up a good point there, that might be the way to ease the pain going forward if we're going to upgrade, is to do that every 5 years then.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
according to this, you say the life expectancy is 5 to 7 years.
7 to 10.
7 to 10. On the mobiles?
Mobiles are higher up.
Okay.
I believe. I would have to research that again. I do have those numbers on my computer, but I think those are higher, definitely higher, like 15 to 20.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions for Mike?
Mike? One last question, Mike, on the, it was, I don't think we got to it, but it was on the list. Was the intent, has there been discussion between you and Ron and the towns of borrow versus some other form of payment aside from the grant opportunity?
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now, we haven't even got that far with the other communities. Right now, I was looking at free cash, and I know this budget year, there's probably not going to be really that much free cash left this year. So it's just where I put it in the spreadsheet at this point. We haven't really figured out where we're going to move with this and how we're going to fund it yet. Mainly right now, it's trying to be funded by the state 911 department. Moving forward, it's going to be a decision with obviously Ron and the other communities to figure out how we're going to do this, whether we borrow or utilize free cash when we can.
Were you hoping for a decision this year from the CIP?
No, not really. It was just the formality of producing the first 5-year capital budget for the department and just show what the needs are that the department has right now. And then try to figure out how to move forward from here.
The reason I ask is because we haven't gotten, and I don't know if you had them available to you, we haven't gotten our own request sheets on any of this equipment that the CIP uses for analysis. So I can send them over to you. I can email those to you to be filled out. So maybe
Sure.
that'll help you compile things per town or whatever, what we need in regards to prior on the end user radio replacement on
Yeah,
that. Okay,
definitely.
so you're not looking for us to make a decision on this. You're just looking for us to start the process with you to
Yep.
evaluate the need of what's going on.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, great.
I have one additional question.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, there is, would there be any cost savings to the town implementing this? Is the old equipment extremely expensive to maintain, or is there a financial reason to do this now?
So the old equipment, yes, per se, it is expensive to maintain due to the fact that all the equipment's discontinued, and now we're at bay with who has equipment left, replacement parts, who has it left, and what are they going to charge us at this point? Because when those quantities get low for these manufacturers that do make these, they jack the price up when there's not many left, just to make their money off of them. So it is hard, it is very expensive to maintain the old equipment. The new equipment, obviously not. More equipment around, more parts available.
All right.
So you have to send everything out of country, if you will, out of the town, because there's nobody to service it in this area at all?
There's people in the area that can service them, but whether or not they can obtain the parts to service these pieces.
Okay.
And that's the problem they're having, is finding these pieces, and a lot of them are going to eBay and trying to find them on there at this point.
Otherwise, it goes back to the manufacturer?
If it goes back to the manufacturer, they're just going to send it back and say, sorry, we can't help you because there is no parts for this. We discontinued it, so we don't service it anymore.
Okay, so you're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Okay. Any other follow-up for Mike? I know he's at his son's baseball game, so I want to let him get back to it if he can, coaching. So I don't want to hold him up any longer than necessary, but are there any follow-up questions?
If I could just comment quickly through the chair, just thank you. It was useful. I think we'll certainly be in a better position to get into the specifics after we know what the other towns are going to do with some clarity, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so having no other questions for Mike, we're going to let you go. We really appreciate you being here. This has been very helpful as a first start for us working together. So
thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm glad I can make it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care. Moving forward, Joe, you ran the last one, so why don't I let you kind of take this and follow up on the last meeting of what you did and where we need to go from here, if that's okay?
Okay, so what we did last time, Harry, is we met with Nancy Nichols, and I think we pretty much came to the conclusion that we're going to table. She had a lot of revisions. You know, when we look at the budget, the binder that Ron submitted for the Council on Aging,
Yeah.
the priorities have shifted significantly based on our conversation with Nancy. And I'm trying to pull up the tab. Give me a second. And I think what we determined is that the ones that are of higher priority, all in one way, shape, or form, are tied to the building study. That's the facility study that's hopefully shortly going to be completed. So that was pretty much the gist of the conversation with Nancy. Therefore, I think the conclusion we drew is that we're not really including those items in our process this year until we know the outcome of that facility study, because they're going to be intertwined with all the other building facilities we have. And then from there, hopefully that study will help prioritize what those needs are.
Okay. How was she with that, Joe?
Well, through the conversation, that's the mutual agreement or conclusion that we all came to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The exception could be if she gets the patio and the doors through the ADA grant or something.
Well,
I have no idea how long it'll take before she knows that. She wasn't sure either.
yeah, the pavilion was potentially covered under the CARES Act. So I think that was being looked into. And then she seemed to indicate the purchase of the exterior doors, there was an ADA grant already received for those, is the
Okay.
way I understood it, Mike.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't pick up on that part.
I don't know, maybe Mitch knows that for sure, but that's the message I got.
That's a surprise to me as well.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that, maybe there was some money moved around if it was left over from the prior ADA grant, but usually that's not how that works. So
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
I was under
that's,
the impression she was applying for them.
yeah, see, I wrote potentially, the pavilion was potentially covered, but I wrote that the exterior doors, an ADA grant was received for this. So yeah, that's something we probably gotta check in on with Nancy. But regardless, even if a grant wasn't received for them, they'd still be part of that facility study.
Right.
So did anybody get a clue or have an understanding or anything, if that's the way I can phrase it, about what we're doing with that $30,000 that's sitting there for the study? Is that going to go back in? Are we going to eliminate that? Or is that going to be kept for future years? Any understanding on that?
We did not talk about that $30,000, Harry. That didn't come up in the conversation.
Okay.
no, that went back, that went to town meeting. So, you know, I think out of respect to the public that voted for it, you'd have to bring it back. And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but request to reappropriate it. There are other spots in the building that have been identified that are better that can go towards after that facility study is complete.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Mitch, is that we got 30, quote, tied up, if you will, that we need to kind of remove and reallocate to these other things.
Yeah, I think Ron is working on a best way forward with that. I think we're just waiting on the results of that facility study. That building has a lot of needs, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
So that, I think that pretty much summarizes the conversation with Nancy. I mean, the other items, you know, that are on that list, you know, it's the boiler for the building, it's the roof for the building, it's the windows, it's the doors. So all of that's tied to facilities. The only other item was the COEA van. And she said she's removing that request for now because it's her feeling that would be most beneficial if there was a regionalized effort associated with the van, and no such region exists at this point. So she was removing that request altogether.
That van though too, it's my understanding that it's just for deliveries or for kind of some of the work they're already doing right now. We have some surplus vans out of DPW, and I'm just not sure if those conversations have been had as to if we can use one of those perhaps for the COA. But
Are they like the only vans that Joe showed us, not this past year, but the year prior, are the ones he's trying to replace, Mitch, because they're falling apart. You're not referring to those vans, are you?
well, I mean, we're going to auction it off, and if we're just using it for you know, delivery, I don't think we're going to have anybody being transported in that van, are we?
Well,
I was under the impression that she was going to use some transport.
Okay, all right, then that's a different conversation. All right.
Yeah, I think when I talked with Nancy about the van, she was looking to use it to not only pick up from Rutland, but other towns that would want to come to the senior center. So that's a bigger discussion, like Joe was saying, about maybe regionalizing it, that I don't think that's on the table right now.
yeah, and I'm looking at the description in the binder, and it does say, Mitch, it would allow provision of transportation for a variety of needs, including medical appointments. So we're definitely talking people.
Yep, okay.
Joe, did the committee make a decision on any recommendations or anything last time? At this,
I think we finished our ratings.
okay,
Yep. So everything, the only rating that we weren't able to finish was the dispatch radio upgrade. Pending the conversation tonight, but all the other items that have come before us that we've agreed that we're gonna rate, we did rate, and I think I sent out Harry the sheet, the kind of the collection sheet after that meeting.
okay.
Did anybody ever hear from Seth about the ladder truck?
No, I sent that email. That was one of our follow-ups. I did send an email to Seth, but now that you say it, Mike, I never received a response back on that.
Okay.
Because that's completely dependent upon his grant,
Yes.
obviously.
Joe, did you send it under the CIPC historical request tracking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I got it then. Do we feel we have enough information at this time to make recommendations for 2022 on the ratings for any of the items, so we can, I mean, should we proceed forward with making any recommendations based on our rating at this time, or are we still missing information?
Well, I think we should discuss how we want to handle the dispatch. Are we, based on tonight's conversation, are we not rating that this year?
I don't feel like we can rate it. It's just too much variable that we don't know about the other towns, and if they're going to commit, if they will commit, how long will they commit for? Will Rutland end up doing it on its own? If so, what's the cost differential? There's a lot outstanding.
Yeah, that's a big piece of money right there. Yeah.
Huge.
So I would say at this point, I don't even know if we could make any recommendations at all. I mean, it's almost like it has to be tabled because Mike's not looking for it for next year. He's not thinking of 2022. It has to be 2023 now.
Yeah.
Is that, unless I'm misreading his comments?
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Now, Harry, the funny thing is here, we have everything rated. These are in priority. We've got numbers besides these things, but we've got no idea of funding, or even if there'll be funding. Has there been any word on the how much Rutland's bill to the Wachusett district has gone up? Because that was a major point that Ron made to us.
I'm going to
eat up everything.
I'll defer that to Mitch.
Yeah, the Wachusett bill has been worked down to, I think, around right now we're a little bit under $650,000. Or if you recall, the request was originally at $960,000. It's still untenable, and it puts us in more than an $800,000 deficit. There is money projected to be used for municipal revenue replacement over the next 2 fiscal years from the stimulus bill. But that just provides us a stopgap and not a long-term solution to some of these issues. And in reality, if the school budget were to pass and we were to get that revenue replacement, most of that would just go right back into the school.
Mitch, I don't. Has the school given us a written explanation of the items why they're going up, the rate they're going up?
No, and in reality, that's really the school committee's job is to obtain that. We can just relate to them how much we can afford.
Yeah.
I think how they use their funding is outside of our purview, and they've made that pretty clear on numerous occasions. So the answer to that, Harry, would be no.
Okay. Do we know how much is in their rainy day fund?
The E&D fund?
Yeah.
I'd have to take another look at the budget book they sent us, but offhand, I do not know.
Okay, but it's more than $1 million.
Again, I can't give you a definitive number without looking at it.
Okay, I heard some astronomical numbers. That's why I'm asking. So, okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if you were correct on that.
Okay, as to, the state allows them to go up to 5%. but in a coronavirus year, I'm surprised they're maxing out at 5% on that request, if that's the case. So I thought that it would have been even more favorable to us considering all the issues going on under coronavirus. So
What I will say though, Harry, to that point, I don't know what the number is that they have in E&D, but based on, and Mitch, you probably got the same thing. I received the presentation with the revised number. It looks like they've taken 750 from E&D to fund to offset the budget in the current proposal.
Yep.
I mean, that's both good and bad, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's no different than the town of Rutland using free cash to offset its budget. You're using a one-time non-reoccurring revenue stream to fund an ongoing budget. So it's really not good fiscal practice, but they are taking 750 of, I don't know what the total is, to apply it towards their budget based on the sheet that I got.
and that 750 is for all 5 towns.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm not picking on school or anything. I'm just trying to figure out in a year when we've had such crisis that they have gone up so much on that.
Well,
Okay.
in reality, if the budget passes as is, it looks like it's still untenable for both Holden and Rutland. Paxton is also in pretty poor shape in terms of that school budget. So.
Yeah, so well, I wish luck that we can get this resolved in everybody's favor one way or another, you know. Okay, so we've had no requests from Wachusett either. And I did put a call into, and I have to get back to him. I can't think of his name now. The gentleman on the committee. And I got to get back to him to see if they have any requests. But at this point, I can't answer that. So what do we see on the ratings now as something that is something we can recommend that's reasonable? Is there anything? I mean, we're not going to be able to figure out the funding on this. That's almost going to be impossible to do. But are there things that we can submit that are at least logical or fair that we can do as a committee or the departments going forward this year?
My take, Carrie, is that there's probably 2 items that rose to the top. It's both in the terms of ratings, and I think through our conversations, they rise to that level as far as need. And one, the top rated item, which we probably have to do, is the replace failed heater unit air handler at the library. And there was some talk that there was maybe COVID FEMA funds that could be allocated for that because it's also being used as a vaccination site. Mitch, I don't know if there's any news on that front. Do you know?
No, but I got a notice from Nancy. I think I sent it to everybody that, not Nancy, but Kerry, that they're moving forward with the implementation of the heater in the basement or on the library. They're moving forward. It's supposed to be done already.
Oh, maybe those COVID funds came through.
Yeah, maybe, because I think it was last week or a couple of days, maybe weeks, probably last week. I got an email that said that they were moving forward with the problem of installing that thing and getting it done. So maybe the funds came through, but because I was amazed, and I think I might, if I didn't send it to you, please, I apologize. But I think it sent it to you that where are they doing this? We didn't even get any approval on it. We didn't do anything. So if it must have gotten COVID funds, and that's all I can figure. Because I can't imagine Kerry doing that.
No, I mean, they don't have, I can't imagine they have the funds in the library budget to do it.
Right.
So there must have been some grant.
I will look that up and send it out to you again.
Okay.
Okay, so you can just see that.
So the other one is related. It was the structural integrity repairs around, the HVAC systems on the roof there.
Yeah.
That was the other item. That was the second rated item on the list as far as our rankings go.
I mean, are we in a position, do you feel everybody, that we're in a position to make a recommendation on this so they can get it on the warrant if it's approved by the Finance Committee and Select Board? And that's ultimately our job, is to get these things to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, the way I understand it, the way I always interpreted it, Harry, our primary responsibility is to prioritize the need.
Right,
And while we can weigh in on the funding aspect of it and maybe even give opinion on it, I don't know that that should preclude us from sharing a recommendation so that the finance committee and select board and town can make an ultimate decision. To me, I think we should make a recommendation. And, you know, the fact of the matter is if that recommendation needs to be held a year for funds to be obtained, well, so be it.
right,
It's still a recommendation.
right. So is everybody in agreement that these are the only two items we're gonna recommend then for this year? And then our recommendation for the other items will be postponed till later. You know, looked at but not recommended, like we have in our report on the other items.
I would agree to those two right away, and especially if one's being done. Some of the others, it's hard to say. If you've got no idea on funding, it's hard to recommend things until you
I
do.
know, but I like Joe says, I don't really, we're to look at funding, but that can't be our ultimate reason why we don't recommend something. You know, kind of got to get it on the books,
Yeah.
right? What about the van?
The DPW van?
Just one, no, the one van for the DPW.
Right.
That actually rated.
It got rated lower than,
Yeah, it did.
Like the additional plows, not the new truck, but the additional plows for existing trucks was the highest rated thing DPW had.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that was 10 grand for them.
And
a little over 10 grand.
And to kind of add to that, Mike, the van was Joe's number 3 priority. His number 1 priority was the used dump truck, which was not our next priority in our ranking. Yeah. And then his number 2 priority was the plows that, Mike, you're just talking about, which came in next as far as our ranking. So the van, to me, this year at least, based on not only his priorities but our rankings, would kind of be out of the mix.
Okay. So if we wanted to recommend from the library, we've already got those. If we wanted to make something from DPW, what would we recommend?
Based strictly on ranking, it would be the plows.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Joe Buckley wants the $50,000 used dump, but
yeah,
if that gets put off for a year, at least the 2 plows for 1/5 the cost will cover some ground for him in that.
I know that the one that he has, didn't he say that that's replacing one that's bad, they can't even hardly use anymore, it's all rusted and everything? Isn't that the one he's looking for?
Yeah, a 2000 International.
Yeah, okay. So that the agreement, the consensus of the committee is that we won't put the truck on this year, but we could do the plows.
It seems reasonable to me.
Dan, how do you feel about that?
I think that makes sense. I mean, obviously there's the first 2 items that Joe mentioned came in way far and ahead in terms of ranking. So like at that point, then it becomes, are we going to look at one thing from each department, or like where's the line going to be here?
Well, I think we need, I guess from my perspective, and I love to hear everybody's opinion, we need to do some due diligence for every department. We're not here to favor one or the other. We need to look at the library, the fire, police, DPW, library, and to see if there's anything on there that makes sense that we can rate. You know, if we're at 32 on everybody and then on the police we jump down to 12, well, we're not going to do something with that. So I'm just thinking of priorities, high priorities that we can do. and get it on the books. I mean, it may not get funded, but at least we recommended it, and then we'll maybe recommend it again next year when things change. But I guess personally, I don't want to feel like I'm slighting somebody because we just don't have money, so we're not going to recommend it. I guess that's kind of all these years on the committee. I guess I've kind of changed my flavor a little bit in the way I look at things. So that's why I need your opinions.
Well, I mean, the animal control vehicle didn't rate quite as high as a few things, but that may be a commitment that, you know, the chief is trying to get us into with all the other community towns. So that could weigh a little more heavily there. That doesn't, the fact that other towns might be dependent upon us doesn't weigh into our sheet where we put those rating numbers in.
Right.
I would say if times are really financially bad, a new animal vehicle we might put off for 1 year. You've got to maintain some sort of plows and stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He did also say he was leaning towards the lease, right? So
Yeah.
it would actually be like a fifth of that.
Right, because the other towns could swallow that. They could swallow a lease, small payments, but paying all up front, they'd have a hard time with that. Mitch?
Look, I mean, this is a rough budget year. So I understand we want to recommend things because we have needs. But at the same time, at some point, you know, we have to communicate to the community that there's a balance, and we just, you know, we don't have the money.
Right. I understand what you're saying, Mitch, and I don't want to put pressure on the select board or the finance committee.
No, please do.
But I also feel that if we don't put these things on the list for recommendations and we don't put them in our report as recommendations, then somehow the townspeople may not understand that these are even important because they weren't important enough to recommend. And so we're just going to spend, we have this money, we're going to spend somewhere else when we have these absolute needs that we have.
So I think that begs the question though, like if we're scoring these things, are we scoring them and not taking into account budget considerations? Because if we're scoring them without taking into account the budgetary, you know, constrictions we have, then that's fine. We can present that. But at the same time, you know, I feel like we have to look also at what is tenable, and that goes into the scoring mix. And if that goes into the scoring mix, then, you know, I would want to put something in the report to make it clear that we would like to fund everything or some of these things that we've rated highly, but given the current budget situation, some of these things are just not tenable moving forward until that situation changes.
I agree, Mitch, and I think that's why we're not recommending the dump truck this year.
Right.
The 250, because that's way out of the budget. You know?
So just when we're talking tenable, I just want to kind of throw this out so we all know where we stand. If let's take the failed heater unit air handler out of the mix, because I think we're operating on the assumption that that's covered by a grant.
Yeah.
And that's the highest rated item, by the way. So the next highest rated item is $25,000 for the structural integrity repairs on the roof of the library. So that's 25 grand, which is number 2 in order of ranking.
Okay.
And then number 3 in order of ranking is the 10.5 for the plows. So now we're up to 35 grand. And then if we look at the animal control vehicle, even though the cost is 45 grand, with the lease and the structure of that agreement, Rutland's piece of that in FY2022 is $4,600. So now we're at 40 grand in total for FY22 if we're looking in terms of money. If we made those 4 recommendations, is that tenable? That becomes the question. If we want to bring money into the mix, is that a tenable number? I would be tempted to say it is, but I guess that's up for debate.
I've been on many years when we've had tough budget years, and we've made some $100,000 recommendations. This is considerably different, but I don't know if recommending $40,000 worth of stuff is the same as demanding it. It's like, these items are needed. And I don't want, like I said, I don't want to put pressure on the select board to say no and the finance committee to say no, but I don't want that to stop us either from making recommendations of things that are needed in town. And, you know, we've had years, 80,000, 100,000. And then here's the other thing I have for you. What about taking or using some of the money that we have in the fund?
Yeah, and that's the other piece of it. So I don't know what the most current number is. I have a number here as of May of last year, Harry, and I'm sure this has changed. But the Capital Stabilization Fund has 168 grand in it.
Yeah.
As of May of last year.
And we're supposed to be funded every year.
Yeah, and I don't know what's in. I don't have the free cash numbers offhand.
But remember one year, Margaret, we forgave, if you will, the money coming into the fund and spent that on needed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be part of the mix.
You just don't know what that number is. You're not going to know that number until November.
No, but I'm saying, say it's 10 grand, 15 grand. I think it's usually more than that, quite about 40 grand, I think, is what the number comes in if my memory serves me. But, you know, so even if it's 10 grand our share, that can go towards something. We don't have to build it, but we don't have to take it either to help out. So I don't think 40, personally, I don't think 40 is a big number if we can help the town out by using some of the money that's been set aside in a very tough year. Now, I don't think years are going to get any easier going forward. I really don't. So that's up to the committee to consider. And if we want, we'll put it to a vote to see how you feel. But
well, I think they are though, Harry. You know, I think we have a bunch of new commercial entities coming into town, and we have a 55 plus community whose project has now grown to 120 units of market rate.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that. Yeah.
I mean, that's projected to bring in now around $600,000 of annual revenue without impacting the school numbers. So I think just because of the school assessment this year and because of the pandemic and the projected impact on municipal revenues, we're going to be down this year and next year, but I think we have the potential to pick up quite a bit. But it's just a matter of what we want. I mean, with Joe's question of, is this an acceptable number? Well, this is how town meeting is going to play this year. That's 2 police officers, because right now we're going to be asking departments for cuts, and it's going to be personnel.
Yeah. So I think the issue that, and I agree that Harry, or the point that Harry's making, Mitch, is it's not up to this committee to place any of our recommendations on a warrant. That's a decision that others make.
Yep.
The charge of this committee is to prioritize needs that were brought to us and communicate what our results of our process were. And it's happened in the past. It's not uncommon that things that get recommended from us don't get funded for 2 and 3 years. That's the reality of it. Right. But that's not our decision. So I don't know that we should hold up a recommendation because we're assuming the FinCom and Board of Selectmen don't want to pay for it. I think we should pass forward a recommendation and then let the FinCom and Board of Selectmen make that decision as to whether they're going to place it, or the Selectmen, whether they're going to place an article on the warrant or not. That's their choice at that point. And certainly I don't get hurt one way or the other.
No,
personally. But I feel like we've done our job if we at least make a recommendation and allow the Board of Selectmen the opportunity to make that decision to place it or not. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think also that, and Joe, I'm not sure how the fund works, whether we have the right to take the money out of it, or the select board has the right to take the money out of the fund, but that's an option for them if they want to fund something to take money out of that too.
So that's the next phase. The way I see this is if we make a recommendation for these, let's say for these 4 items, and then part of the conversation that should surround whether the select board places that article on the warrant is then at that point, I would think we'd have that dialogue. Okay, you recommended this. Would you be okay with, if we placed it, that the motion be to take it from capital stabilization? That would be a subsequent conversation that I think that, you know, the select board would maybe approach us and we'd have that dialogue. But to me, that's not a piece that happens right now.
Right. Mike, what do you say about that?
I agree with pretty much what Joe just said. I think we have to, there's priorities that have to be done, should be done. And I think we should say that. And I think if we're only recommending $40,000 worth of stuff this year, that's not a, historically speaking, that's a kind of small bite. I know it's a tough year, but we don't know how tough it is in terms of the actual dollar values that they'll be able to come up with, or, you know, what cuts might have to be made. I think we simply say that these are priorities that are worth pushing for. If they can't be done, they can't. You can't get blood from a stone.
Right.
But at least you tell them what you believe is important.
Okay. Thank you. Dan?
I'm certainly comfortable with that $40,000 figure as a recommendation. I think, for one, like somebody said, it's not a mandate, it's a recommendation. And if something from that list has to go or all of it can't be done, then so be it. And then 2, you know, that does take the budget overall into consideration. And if there are other things on that list that would be beneficial, like Joe Becker does have a need for that 5-ton dump. So we are taking budget into consideration by not putting more things on that list.
Right.
Joe Buckley needs it. Joe Becker doesn't.
Okay.
We didn't know if you were driving a plow now. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
In a good year, we'd recommend everything on this list, and it might go true, but we haven't seen a year that good in a while, I don't think.
Okay, so do we want to make recommendations tonight? Or do we want to postpone it till the next meeting, which will be about
2 weeks.
towards the middle end of March, somewhere in there?
You gotta do it tonight because the warrant's open and it closes on the 4th.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Harry, just to start the conversation. I'll make a motion that the Capital Improvement Committee recommend the following 4 items for the FY22 capital plan. The library to replace a failed heater unit air handler, the library unit structural integrity repair request, the DPW new plow request, and the animal control, the regional animal control vehicle request.
Okay. Do I have a second on that recommendation?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion or any discussion on that recommendation? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a voice vote. Dan?
Gracie, aye.
Mike?
Mike Ferguson here, aye.
Joe?
Becker, aye.
Mitch?
City, aye.
Harry Seckman? Aye. Motion, motion for the recommendations for the 2022 budget moving forward as unanimous. Thank you, Joe.
Harry, would you like me to draft a memo to Ron? I think it goes to Ron and the Board of Selectmen of our, actually we'll probably go to the FinCom as well, but
Yeah.
Just notifying of that vote so that they have it in hand for when the warrant. Mitch, to your earlier point, I fully anticipate that these, if they get funded this year at all, it would not be until the fall special town meeting anyway. So my guess is they're not going to be placed on the annual, but at least they have it in hand to consider during the annual.
Right. I think that's a good idea. And I'd also, if we could meet with the select board and FinCom to discuss these items, one of us could be there. I'll be happy to be there. If there's any need for that, you know, but yeah, I think what you're doing, I appreciate that, Joe, that if you send it out to all 3, I know Ron is the one who sent out the request for warrants, so I know it'll go to him, but probably CC the other two on it.
Okay.
All right. And then next month we'll draft our report, or start drafting our report on the recommended, non-recommended items and all the discussion we had around it.
So I think the first report we got to focus on, Harry, is last year's, right? Because that's the one that has to be due for. We're probably already past due on that one
Yeah.
for the town report, because it's the FY20 report that's being published now.
Right. Right. So we can actually, we do such, I think we do such a good job on that report that it doesn't take much in a Word document for those guys to put it right in. But I do need, we need to get that to Anita. I'd love to get it by the next time. So maybe we can look at what we can do, each person, to pull this thing together. So we have some type of hard copy to look at our next meeting. Is that acceptable?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd say so.
Um,
Joe, are you gonna send us a copy of this memo also?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yep.
and what Joe, I'll send out an old report so you can start line iteming and look what items have to go in and how to word it and that stuff. As long as it's in a Word document, I can paste everything in.
Yeah, for the memo, I was just gonna do what we did last year, Harry. Just kind of draft an email memo, just so they know the items.
No, I agree. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I agree on that, Joe. Okay.
So just a question, and I don't think it got made to the agenda, but I don't know that we need to make official vote one way or the other. So I think we're okay to at least discuss it. Peter Crane a couple weeks back had sent a summary of our most recent conversation about the bylaw.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to look, because I forgot to bring it up at our last meeting, if we want to take a couple minutes and just kind of give it the look tonight to make sure we're good, so we can get back to Peter on feedback there.
Yeah,
I
I got to print it out. I don't even have a copy of that, so I have to go in here and look at it. Does
Yeah.
everybody have a copy?
I believe I do. I was under the impression that we agreed with all the changes I wanted to make, except the one that we discussed, with Peter, the alternate wording to refer to the bylaws that already exist for is it the selectmen's bylaw? Or?
Yeah, and I think that's addressed. So let me see if I can bring it up here.
And that was our only real concern, and they were going to accept most of our recommendations.
Right. That's what I'm looking for right now.
All right, what piece was that? Say that again, Mike, because I just was able to bring it up.
I'm going by memory, but there was a reference that we made that they had to present things to us, and instead he recommended we simply refer to an existing document.
That's right. Yeah.
Is it the bylaws for the selectmen or
There was
something?
something that had been removed from the original CIPC bylaws, and they want to move it over into the select board bylaws. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a critical part of our power. And so if it is included in the other one, then it's fine. But it seems like our, signing off on these changes would be contingent upon that being included in the other portion.
Yeah, I think what we talked about was at a minimum a reference back to the other location, right?
Right. Rather than having two wordings, which in some way could conflict with each other, possibly depending on the wording around them. You simply refer to the wording that's already there in the other document. And I thought that's what we were agreeing to.
Jeez, I can't find it here.
Yeah.
All right, so
yep, I got it. Okay.
I don't know that everyone has. Let me see the email. I'm wondering if we.
I'll
maybe
find,
we should put this on the next agenda and make sure everyone has this version of it. So that we can give it the final blessing officially at our next meeting.
Do you have a date of that document if you found it, Harry?
yeah, it was sent out on, hold on,
February 28th.
February 28th. Yep.
I'm seeing that it just went to you and me, Harry. So I'm thinking maybe
Yeah.
we've got to,
Yeah, maybe I haven't seen the final one.
yeah,
seen
I'll push it out to everyone. And then we'll get on, Harry, can we put it on our next meeting and we can do the
Sure.
final blessing?
Yeah.
All right.
Schedule.
Because I'm not seeing it either. I think I was referring to the original one that we went through that was all marked up in many ways.
Yep. Yeah, we met with Peter after that one, and that's what this version here is the result of that conversation, Mike.
Okay, maybe I haven't seen that then.
I don't think you have. I don't think you have.
So we're thinking like 2 weeks out.
Yeah, we probably should. Probably should.
So
Dan.
the 8th.
I can't do it the 8th.
All right. So what else do we have available here?
The 15th.
I could do it, but I'd be late.
Yeah, we don't want to be late for this one where we're on that.
Could you do the 7th or the 9th?
How does the 7th look?
I'm okay with the 7th.
Dan, how are you looking?
I can do that.
Okay. Joe?
I'm gonna be the tough one again.
Okay.
I don't have anything officially on my calendar, but it's my son's birthday, and I don't know what the plan is.
Gotcha. Oh, I gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, we could
He's
be,
old enough, Joe, to where he should be getting used to disappointment. So
what about if we have to move it up a week? I guess we can. What about the 14th or 15th?
I'm okay either one of those.
I'm okay with the
15th.
15th.
15th is better.
All right, 15th then. Let's book it for that. Mitch, you okay too?
that looks on my end good.
Okay. So let's book that one for the 15th. And I'm trying to look through this, Joe, and I'm not seeing anything that I am not seeing anything here in terms of what changes we moved or whatever. It should refer back. I know what Dan's talking about, and we did talk about that.
Well, he did say he had to get the rest of the committee to agree to that,
Yeah.
but he didn't seem to think it would be a problem, but you never know.
No, and I'm not, because he pretty much 3 years, so anytime. Yeah, I'll have to look through this scrutiny. I'll have to go back through my notes, so it's just as well we discuss this on the 15th then. I can send Peter a note and let him know that we're going to be working on it at the next meeting if he wants to attend. Okay. So we are good on that. So I'll put that on as old business. Anything else now for old business? Other than I'm going to put the report under new business rather than old business. So is there anything else under old business? No. Any other issue under new business then for tonight? Okay, hearing none. Hearing no other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Yeah, just one quick before we take a final vote. I think I found that spot. So we're
You got
looking
a
at.
second before conversation, Mr. Becker.
I don't want to have conversation on the motion though.
You think you found it, Joe, real quick?
Yeah, section.
You guys write it down when I send you this so you can refer to that. Okay.
Yes. So I think it's section 5, letter D.
Okay.
It says the committee shall report to the town meeting its recommendations on any article referred by the select board that expends money for a capital improvement. And then there's a notation that refers to chapter 2, article 2, section 4D. So I think that's the piece that we were all talking about earlier.
I don't know. I don't see under D. Oh, I see what you're saying, because there's an annotation number 1 by the select board.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That's probably what we're talking. So that would be section D under duties. Okay, everybody got that?
Yeah.
All right, we've had a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
There you go, Mitch. You happy now?
Well, no, let's talk about that, Joe.
All right. Voice vote, please. Dan.
Gracie, aye.
Mitch.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Mitch.
Mike,
Mike. Yeah. Okay.
Mike, aye.
Harry. Aye. Gentlemen, I thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.